You know, if you've ever watched a beautiful orchid slowly wither away, you've probably blamed yourself for overwatering it, right? It's often called the silent killer of orchids. But here's a really surprising fact. More often than not, your watering schedule isn't actually the problem at all. The real culprit, it's old, degrading bark substrate that is quite literally suffocating your orchid's roots from the inside out. Repotting isn't just some casual gardening chore. It is an absolute survival necessity for your plant. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to embark on a guided rescue mission, breaking this whole complex process down into 5 totally stress-free phases. Figuring out exactly when to repot, choosing the right supplies, prepping your orchid, walking through the step-by-step guide, and finally, post-repotting care. Let's just dive right in. Kicking things off with Phase 1, when to repot your orchid. Let's identify the exact warning signs that your plant is crying out for some help. Generally speaking, you're going to want to plan to repot your orchid every 1 to 2 years. See, over time, the structural materials they're planted in, stuff like pine bark or sphagnum moss, they simply break down. And when they decompose, that substrate turns into a dense, compacted sludge that traps water and completely blocks vital oxygen. It literally suffocates the plant. You'll also know it's time to take action when the roots are aggressively overflowing the container, or if you water it and notice that the water just isn't draining quickly through the pot anymore. But hold on, because there is a fundamental, non-negotiable rule of orchid care here. You must wait until the flowering cycle is completely finished before you disturb the plant. Seriously, never repot during an active bloom. Orchids expend an enormous amount of energy producing those stunning flowers you love. If you shock the root system by ripping it out of its pot while it's blooming, the plant is almost certainly going to drop its flowers prematurely in an absolute panic to survive. So patience here is definitely key. Okay, moving right along to Phase 2, choosing the right supplies. Using the wrong materials is where so many beginners go wrong, so let's gather exactly what we need for a successful transplant. One of the absolute biggest beginner mistakes is treating an orchid like a standard houseplant and just stuffing it in regular potting soil. Orchids are epiphytes. Out in the wild, they grow on the sides of trees, not in the dirt. Standard soil is just way too dense, it holds on to too much water, and it will quickly rot those roots. Instead, you've got to use a highly structural, slightly acidic mix. A specialized substrate that combines coarse pine bark and coconut fiber is perfect. It holds just enough moisture while allowing those vital roots to actually breathe. Now, when you are picking out a new pot, you absolutely want a transparent one. Why? Well, believe it or not, orchid roots are actually capable of photosynthesis. They need access to sunlight just like the leaves do. And here's another pro tip. Only go one size up from your current pot. If you put it in a massive container, the orchid will spend all of its energy trying to grow new roots to fill up that empty space, which means it won't produce any new leaves or flowers for you. Which brings us to Phase 3, prepping your orchid. Before we perform the actual plant surgery, we really need to prep both our tools and the plant itself to minimize transplant shock. So the day before you plan to repot, give your orchid a really heavy, thorough watering. Dry roots are brittle, they'll snap on you in a heartbeat. But well-hydrated roots, they become super pliable, flexible, and so much easier to untangle. Secondly, make absolutely certain your scissors or pruning shears are completely sterilized with rubbing alcohol or heat. Orchids are super susceptible to infections, and dirty tools are the fastest way to introduce a fatal pathogen straight into the plant system. Don't skip that step. Now, a crucial part of this prep phase is knowing exactly what to look for when we start cutting away the dead roots. How do you spot them? Well, it's highly sensory. A healthy root is firm, plump, usually green or maybe silvery white. A dead root, on the other hand, will feel distinctly mushy, it'll look dark brown or black, and when you gently squeeze it, it's going to feel entirely hollow and papery to the touch. It's basically an empty shell. All right, it is time for the main event, Phase 4, the step-by-step guide. Let's get our hands dirty and actually execute this potting procedure. Start by gently squeezing the sides of the old pot. This just loosens the grip of any roots that might have glued themselves to the plastic. Whatever you do, never yank the plant from the top. Instead, just hold it carefully right at the base of the leaves and ease it out. Once it's free, use your fingers to very carefully massage and clear away every single piece of that old, suffocating bark and moss tangled up inside the root system. You really want to expose those bare roots completely. Next up, take those sterilized scissors and just snip away all of those dead, hollow brown roots we talked about earlier. Don't be afraid to cut them right back to the base if you have to. Once you've removed the rot, here's a really cool trick. You can dab the fresh cuts with a pinch of ordinary kitchen cinnamon. It's actually a fantastic natural fungicide that helps the cuts dry out and prevents infection. Pretty neat, right? Finally, just give the remaining healthy roots a gentle rinse under some lukewarm water to wash away any lingering acidic debris. For the final physical step, take your brand new transparent pot and layer about 15 to 20% of your fresh pine bark and coconut fiber mix right at the bottom. Set your orchid upright on top of that layer, making sure the base of the plant sits just a bit below the rim. Then, simply start adding the rest of your substrate around the roots. You can gently tap the sides of the pot to help the bark pieces settle into all those little gaps. But listen to me on this. Do not press down hard or pack it tightly. Those roots absolutely need air pockets to survive. Oh, and a super quick, vital warning as you finish filling up that pot. Please remember that any silvery, aerial roots that were originally growing way up in the open air outside the old pot, leave them exposed. These aerial roots are specially adapted to pull moisture directly from the air around them. If you bury them deep down in wet bark, they are almost certainly going to rot. We made it to Phase 5, post-repotting care and risks. Our rescue operation is technically complete, but this critical post-operative phase is what ultimately prevents devastating transplant shock and guarantees your orchid's long-term survival. You have got to resist the absolute beginner urge to water the plant immediately after repotting. I know it's tempting, but the roots have just sustained all these tiny micro tears and cuts from the move, and drenching them in water right now just invites rot and bacteria. Instead, you need to wait 4 to 5 days for those roots to heal and callus over before you resume normal watering. Also, definitely hold off on applying any fertilizers for at least 3 to 4 weeks. The roots are just way too sensitive right now, and fertilizer salts can cause severe chemical burns. We really want to manage your expectations right here, because orchids, well, they're famous divas. They generally hate being disturbed. Repotting causes a period of temporary shock, so for the next several months, your orchid is going to prioritize establishing its new root system within that fresh bark. Because all of its energy is directed downwards into root growth, it's totally normal for the plant to grow slowly up top. In fact, it will very rarely produce any new flower spikes in the first year after a repot. Just be patient, it is building a solid foundation for amazing future blooms. Now, just a brief disclaimer to make sure you have the full picture. While this explainer covers your standard rescue and maintenance process, orchids can sometimes suffer from extreme neglect. If you pull your plant out of its pot and you find absolute devastation, deep-rooted rot where virtually no healthy green roots remain, or if the central stem itself is totally black and mushy, the plant might need advanced therapeutic care. In extreme cases of systemic rot like that, it's always safest to consult a professional horticulturist or even a local orchid society before you proceed any further. But hey, for the vast majority of our orchids, a fresh pot and some fresh bark are exactly what the doctor ordered. Now that you understand the vital warning signs of suffocating roots, and you've got a clear step-by-step roadmap for a totally successful transplant, the ball is firmly in your court. Are you ready to conquer your fears and give your orchid the fresh start it so desperately needs? And honestly, it really makes you wonder, what other wild secrets are your everyday houseplants hiding down there in the soil?